Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Panda Talk. My name is Karen Nabasco, your Mr. 2017, and your WWF advocate. It's been quite some time since the last time we did a Panda Talk, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Well, Panda Talk is really more about giving you or giving everyone a free educational web series to learn more about the environmental conservation and specifically what the organization is doing. And I honestly want to thank you because we canceled from last week, but we returned this week. And even though it's a holiday season today, I want to thank you for sparing a portion of your time for tuning in to us. And I'm quite sure you're going to learn a lot of things from us as well. Now, I'm going to give a quick location check of our audiences today. I want to thank you for joining us. People are watching us from Caloocan, Valenzuela, Marikina, Quezon City, Manila, Mandaluyong, Surigao City, and Palawan. Maraming salamat for tuning in to us. Well, today I really am so excited because our topic today is something very close to my heart. Even before I started with joining the Panda family, it's always been my heart to really continue when it comes to environmental journey and environmental conservation. And I started with conservation of energy and the embrace of renewable energy. And I'm quite sure that our topic for today is going to be quite relatable to a lot of people because since we're staying in our houses, I'm quite sure that your bills and your electricity have skyrocketed and you're very much interested to know about what's happening when it comes to the Philippines' current energy situation. So we're also going to talk about renewable energy in this talk. Without further ado, I would love to introduce our speaker for today. Joining us today is WWF-Philippines Climate and Energy Program Head. With more than 20 years of experience in the field, she also serves as the National Director of Earth Hour in the Philippines, a Philippine delegation member to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. She holds degrees in economics and law, has trained at the Beers Environmental Leadership Program in the University of California, Berkeley, and at Renewable Academy in Germany. Her expertise includes environmental law, climate finance, and renewable energy legislation and policy. Let's all welcome Attorney Angela Gia Ibay. Attorney?
Hi, hi
Hi!
Karen.
How
Hi
are you? How are you
everyone.
doing?
I'm
How are
good.
you doing, Bob?
I'm
Can
good
you give
and
us,
well.
thank you. Can you give us like a quick background of like a summary of what you have done for WWF or with WWF?
Oh my. This is gonna date me, but I'm like, more than 10 years already in WWF last June. And we've done a lot of things. I'm working
Mm-hmm.
on as I mentioned, climate legislation. We've been working closely with government agencies, not just with the Climate Change Commission, but also the Department of Energy and of course the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Earth R has been in my other hat, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, even from the start, and it's very interesting. I'm learning a lot along the way, but also I'm glad that we're doing things like this. I'm learning from other people like you. I learned a lot also from knowing that you're a physics major. My God, and you taught physics also before. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's nice to be able to partner with you on this, and you can also give your own sneak tips when I do the discussion later, so that people can hopefully take home something and be able to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's very critical that we do a lot of action and we get more people involved. Yeah.
That's really true. And I'm quite sure that we have, some students watching us today, and perhaps there are teachers watching us. And I'm quite sure that they are very excited to hear from you, attorney. And I personally can't wait to learn from you today. So before we start the talk, I would personally want to tell everyone that if you have any questions or you're going to have any questions during the talk, please do not forget to write your questions in the comment section below because we're going to open the question and answer portion after this talk. Okay, I'll turn the take it away.
Well, thank you, Karen. And so we will start. Let me share my screen. Um, okay. So thank you to everyone for tuning in actually, because this was canceled from last week. And really thank you. And so we start with a light bulb. So what do you normally think when you see a light bulb? Karen, for you, what do you normally think? You see a picture of a light bulb. What's
When
the
I see a light bulb, I think of electricity or an idea.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, a lot of people would probably think that it's an object that brings brightness to a room. It's a new idea or a new thought. Maybe all of these actually. And so if we focus on the light bulb being a darkness emitting object, have people ever wondered what goes behind to bring such power at the flick of a switch and how energy can be transformed? We actually use a lot of energy, right? We wake up to the alarm of our phones. We take a shower. For us, sometimes we use a hair dryer, especially when we were going to work before. And a lot of things, even the transport to bring us to and from our work or our house. And even now, when we're stuck in our own homes, we're still using a lot of energy. Some of us, we watch Netflix, or some play video games. And then at the end of the day, we switch off the lights and those off, right? So that's a typical day for many people. So it's really instant power at the flick of a switch. And if we press the on and off buttons of our gadgets and the appliances we use, but have we ever questioned where does our energy come from? Um, uh, I'm sure, like you, Karen, you've probably thought of this even when you were teaching before. But many people don't actually really take it for granted. So we'll do a little back to basics here. So energy, it's really a physical quantity that follows precise natural laws. And in a sense, energy is everything. It's everything in the universe is worth a certain amount of energy. And energy is a property that all things can have. So the total amount of energy in the universe always stays the same. So it's constant. And Karen, what is this actually? This constant, this particular natural law. What would you think it is?
Oh, I
It's,
believe we're going to enter thermodynamics this time. Correct me if I'm wrong, attorney. That energy is neither created nor is
well, it's
destroyed.
probably I think we lost Karen.
Oh yeah, now we're back. Yes,
Yes. Yeah,
I believe that.
thermodynamics. Actually, it's
Yes.
the second law of thermodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably think so. Total amount, yeah, the total amount of energy in the universe always stays the same. No problem. So it's the second law of thermodynamics. But what is it? Yeah, so an energy cannot be created or destroyed. Yeah, so it cannot be created or destroyed, or it can only be changed or transformed. So that's the first law of thermodynamics. And we all learned this back in school, right? But of course, just to refresh us, what are the different types of energy? And because we use energy every day, and it's good to know how is it in fact that we're able to figure out how to convert energy from one form to the other, right? One type. So these are just some of the types, or the types of energy that we learned. We have kinetic energy, which is the energy that comes from movement or in motion, as compared to potential energy, wherein you have stored energy. And in kinetic energy, there are basically different types. You have mechanical energy, which is motion or the movement of objects or substances from one place to the other. So in this example, you probably use a car or a bike, or when you're throwing a ball, that's really and when there's motion to that. Then you have electrical energy, or energy from the flow of electric charges, or the flow of electric charges from one direction, and your electrons are in one direction. So an example of this would be when you're using lighting, batteries, or even the use of electrical lines. You have thermal energy or heat energy, which is the internal energy of a substance involving vibration or movement of particles. So these particles, when they move, the more kinetic energy they have, that's the more thermal energy it also has, or it becomes hotter. Then you have radiant energy or light energy that travels, or electromagnetic energy that travels in transverse waves. So your example of that would be X-rays or UV radiation. Lastly, you have sound energy, the movement of energy through substances in the form of compression waves or radio waves. In terms of potential energy, wherein you have stored energy, this is when you have chemical energy would be one of those. When you have energy stored in the bonds of atoms and molecules, such as when it's stored in food. So when it's in food, there's that energy, but when it's eaten or processed, that energy there is transferred into the process or into the cells of our body when we eat it. Nuclear energy is stored energy in the nucleus of an atom, and that holds the nucleus together. And then you have gravitational energy. They say that energy stored in an object's height relative to the Earth's surface. So when, of course, because of gravity, when it you have an object, it will fall if you let go of it, right? And then lastly, you have elastic energy, which is essentially just stored mechanical energy, which is energy that's stored in an object by application of a force. In this case, when it's being stretched. So these are the types of energy that we generally learn when we're in school. And actually, we experience it on a day-to-day basis. But like you and me, I also get confused. What's the difference between energy and power, right, Karen? No, so sometimes a lot of people actually interchange this. So I thought of doing a diagram, or what you call this, a little table to sort of give an example or then differentiate between energy and power. So the simple definition would be energy is the capacity to do work as compared to power, which is the rate at which work is done, or the rate by which energy is transmitted or converted. So when you look at units on energy, you have usually denominated as joules or watt seconds. You know it mostly, are more familiar for it as kilowatt hour or megawatt hour. So when we hear or see the term megawatt hour, you're actually referring to energy, as compared to when you talk about just watts or megawatts. You're actually talking about power, or the rate at which the energy is used. The equation are actually just inverse of each other. So energy would be power times multiplied by time. But when you talk about power, it's actually energy over time. And then for energy, when we look at the features, we say we don't really say we generate energy. We're actually generating power. Um, but we are saving energy. We're not saving power. So those are the two things I think that where people get confused. So I hope that makes it a little bit clearer. And then of course we will talk later on a lot about how when we generate power, how is it transmitted? And so when you look at the grid, we're looking at when we talk about installed capacity, that's really power. And when we're talking about consumption, we're looking at energy. An example here is if I left a 6-watt light bulb on for 30 days, which raised my electric bill by 43.2 kilowatts, you're really talking about the amount of energy that you used up. But an example of power would be in terms of a battery can provide 500 amps at 12 watts, which is equal to 6 kilowatt of power. So this is just a simple table that I hope can sort of make people understand what is the sort of the difference between energy and power. So what do you think, Karen? Is this correct?
Yes, it's correct. It's very good because it's very much in general terms that people can understand, and hopefully our audiences learn something today.
Yeah. So yeah, and I hope that you won't be as confused as before. But of course, we need to also talk about when we talk about energy, we need to also talk about its relationship with the use of the energy that we use today with the Earth's climate, and it really depends on the source of the energy that we have. Um, And one of that is we've learned that one earlier that there's energy coming from the sun. And it really makes its way to the earth. And that solar energy is absorbed by the earth's surface. And part of this is actually another natural, phenomenon or natural phenomenon that happens, which is the greenhouse effect. That heat that is radiated from the sun, absorbed by the Earth's surface, can be radiated back to space. But oftentimes, it's also retained inside the Earth as something that we are absorbed. Otherwise, if we didn't have this, it would be too cold. So the greenhouse effect is actually is a natural process, which is actually good. The challenge that we're having now is what we call the enhanced greenhouse effect, wherein it's enhanced because this blanket of what we call greenhouse gases, which is sort of like a blanket, which is in our atmosphere, they're like getting thicker, or we're having an increased concentration of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, which when we have that heat from the sun, it actually doesn't get radiated back into space, but retained. And therefore, we're having what we call global warming. And this causes a lot of abrupt changes in our climate. So this becomes a problem. But we didn't actually learn about this before. I mean, the effect of greenhouse gases when that they would absorb heat. We only of recent, or not really recent, maybe a couple of years when this has been studied closely, that we've learned to understand that greenhouse gases are actually absorbing heat because they're more complex than other gas molecules in the atmosphere. And they have a structure which enables them to absorb that heat. And they either radiate it back to the space, or they bounce it back to another greenhouse molecule, or it's actually retained here in the Earth's surface. So this relationship, when of how we use our energy, we didn't really think about how its impact will be on this particular natural process. In fact, in the 1800s, when the Industrial Revolution started, when you think of a light bulb, the light bulb moment at the time was that we realized we can actually use fossil fuel such as oil, coal, and gas, to power our factories, our industries, our homes, our cars. And when these fuels were burned, they actually released energy with incredible capacity for work. So it was such a, as I say, a light bulb moment. Um, this era actually played host to a myriad of inventors, such as Ben Franklin, Michael Faraday, the inventor of the electric dynamo, Thomas Edison, and Joseph Swan, who are inventors of the incandescent filament light bulb, and all around electrical wizard, Nikola Tesla, who became an important contributor to the birth of commercial electricity. And while the discovery of electricity actually can be traced back to the ancient Greeks and ancient Persians, it is Italian physicist Alessandro Volta who discovered that particular chemical reactions could produce electricity. So he constructed in 1800 the voltaic pipe, which is sort of an early electric battery that produced a steady electric current. And so he was the first person to create a steady flow of electric charge. He's also accredited with having created the first transmission of electricity by linking positively charged and negatively charged connectors and then driving an electric charge or voltage through them. So that's why the voltage is named after Alessandro Volta. So it's really intriguing to understand how energy can be transformed and how it can actually be used to make lives better and still let our environment thrive, right? You've seen how people use energy for transportation, for heating, for lighting, for communication, even for, growing and harvesting food, if in fact. But try to imagine what life would be without, the use of this, even the use of electricity and appliances or light bulbs working for you. But Karen, can you picture it if we didn't have all of these conveniences that we have at the moment?
I honestly cannot imagine life without electricity.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you make a list of all the appliances and gadgets and machines you have in your household or in your person, you'd probably be surprised, no, Karen? How many? I'm sure it's not just one.
Yes. And I'm
Yeah,
quite sure we're not going to have this webinar without electricity as well.
true, true. And definitely now, especially now that we're all working at home, right? But we know that, and therefore we know that demand for energy will continue to grow even year after year, even when they said our economies have slowed down. We will still need lots of it to power our homes and businesses. Unfortunately, the conventional approaches to producing power are really causing a great strain to our planet. For decades, we've really relied so much on dirty and harmful fossil fuel to the detriment of our environment. And our energy systems continue to remain outdated, unfortunately, over the years, with the production of electricity becoming more costly. You mentioned that earlier, Karen, that, it's been coming costly and we have had what we call bill shocks this past month. And if our audiences would ask our parents or your parents or friends how much electricity they were charged this past months, would probably be so so angered, I guess, for many people. And it's really costly. And it's costly not just from a financial perspective, but it's costly also because it's accompanied by social and environmental impacts. For example, Karen, did you know that fossil fuel energy consumes a lot of water and has
Yes.
see, and has negative impact on water resources. So that's
Mhm.
really challenging for nearby communities who live near these areas. And as a result, they have pollution even during the production process when fossil fuel is used. And most of our coal plants are, really last minimum of 30 years. And because that's how the developers have developed it. But in those 30 years, we've had detrimental impacts, external costs, as they say, to our environment. So the burning of coal actually also is serious health concern worldwide. And it's really causing more than 800,000 premature deaths globally every year. I can imagine all these toxic fumes also being emitted from the smokestacks of fossil fuel plants or coal plants, not just in the Philippines, but in other countries as well. So this relentless demand actually is also releasing a lot of CO2 into our atmosphere. And I mean, we showed earlier the greenhouse gases, and the big part of the anthropogenic, what they say, human-made or human caused greenhouse gas is coming from is carbon dioxide. And this actually creates great amounts of challenges for us, especially when we talk about climate change. So as our planet is warming, we're continuously going to bear the brunt, unfortunately, of climate disasters such as stronger typhoons, which will put many people in harm's way. So in fact, if we're consuming more than we need, Tomorrow is a significant day because according to the Global Footprint Network, they've calculated that tomorrow humanity will have burned through all the natural resources that the Earth planet can replenish for 2020. And this is what they call Earth Overshoot Day. Um, More than 60% already beyond our planet's sustainable limits. Can you imagine that, Karen? It's only what? Tomorrow is August 22.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they say it's a little bit better because last year it was July, this overshoot day. So because of the pandemic, it sort of has helped. But I don't think we can celebrate because we're still using a lot of the Earth's resources. Dapat good yan for 1 year. And in fact, the Global Footprint Network has said humanity is using an equivalent of 1.6 planets. And we only have one Earth, right, Karen? So
That's
uh,
true.
we don't have a planet B. I mean, there's talk about going to Mars, and people are actually paying, I guess, going to another planet. But until such time that you find a planet that can sustain us and sustain
Mm-hmm.
life, it's gonna be our planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really should start with us having to use our energy in a more sustainable manner. So the Earth really has an abundant source actually of natural energy waiting for it to be utilized. And that are what we call renewable energy. So we're fortunate enough to have what the DOE or our Department of Energy says the big show. Big because it stands for biomass, G for geothermal, S for solar, H for hydro, O for ocean, or in this case wave, and then W for wind. So the big show. And all of these are actually found in the Philippines. So we're very, very, very fortunate enough to have all these kinds of, or these sources of renewable energy. And in fact, the National Renewable Energy Board, and they've been very kind enough to their chairperson to share me some of the slides for for this talk. We have a lot of renewable energy potential. This has been calculated based on the renewable energy contracts that have been awarded as of June 2020. So you can see we have a lot of solar potential, hydro, wind, all the way to ocean, even ocean. And I think ocean will have more potential as the technology improves and becomes more viable because we are archipelagic in nature. The country is surrounded by water, and there's a lot of even more potential in that aspect. So I'm actually excited for that. And here are examples of some of those renewable energy um, plans across developments across the country. This is just a small sampling of it. We can't, of course, think of from the resource what happens. So the resource, when it goes to the plant generates power. You actually have electricity that flows. So this is the flow of an electric charge. So it can power machines, appliances, and gadgets. And this is just some of the things that we've learned earlier about what is a watt. It's a basic unit of power, and we've seen how electricity consumption can actually be computed. But once you generate that power, how does it get transported? That electricity. So this is a simple diagram. So from the power plant, it goes to transmission lines, goes to a distribution utility, and to our household. A more complicated diagram would probably be this, and this probably be more realistic because we would have generating stations, we would have overhead transmission lines, which would transport the electricity to receiving stations or substations before it is transmitted to the distribution utility. And the distribution utility would have different customers. They would have commercial customers or industrial customers or residential customers like us. And if you want to look at it from the perspective of the Philippine electricity market, we have the generators. So these are the plants, renewable energy plants or fossil fuel plants. They transmit what they generate to the national grid, which is handled by the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, who transmits it to the different distribution utilities or electric co-ops. So the big distribution utilities across the country are Meralco, Veco, and Davao Light before it goes to consumers or households. And these are governed by power supply agreements, or we actually they also get from the wholesale electricity spot market. So this is the basic diagram of the electricity market structure in the Philippines. And the DOE would always say that we need to ensure that there's adequate supply of energy, even if we experience disasters or pandemics that we are going through. And they said that during the pandemic, this is as of June 7, there was sufficient supply of energy, although the demand was shifted from the industrial and commercial to residential because most of us or all of us stayed at home. So that was a change. But if we look at our power generation mix, it's unfortunate to see that most of it actually comes from fossil fuel. So almost 80% is from fossil fuel, and of that 80%, a big chunk of it comes from coal, 54.61%, and this is as of 2019. And the share of renewables has actually shrunk. And if you translate this in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, therefore, the power generation, that 78% of our greenhouse gases, which come from the energy sector, 46% is contributed by power generation, and 31% is from the transport sector. So if we're able to make our power generation sector greener, quote unquote, we will have hopefully lesser greenhouse gas emissions from emanating from that sector. And if we talk about, goals of or directions that we should move, this is the strategic direction that the Department of Energy has for the energy sector for for the Philippine Energy Plan of 2017 to 2040, which they say is aligned with Ambition Natin 2040. And you can see here that there is a goal also to promote low carbon future. But of course, DOE will always say that they have to temper this with the other strategic directions that they are mandated to do. But for us in WWF and a lot of environmental organizations, we really think that we should be shifting more and harnessing more our country's huge renewable energy potential so that we can reduce our own country's carbon emissions. And it actually addresses energy security, which is the number one strategic direction. Um, and one of the things that has helped us is actually the Renewable Energy Act of 2008. This was enacted so we can accelerate the development of renewable energy resources, and while also establishing the necessary infrastructure and mechanisms so that the development will flourish. And in doing so, the Renewable Energy Act provides for fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to promote renewable energy, so that at the end of the day, we hope that we would have a balance of economic growth and development with the protection of our health and environment by preventing or reducing the harmful emissions into our atmosphere by having more renewable energy into our mix. So as I mentioned, the Renewable Energy Act has both fiscal and non-fiscal. So I'll not belabor this so much, and this comes from the National Renewable Energy Board, but we're very glad that they say that in terms of the non-fiscal mechanisms, all of these are actually now in place. After more than 10 years of the Renewable Energy Act being enacted, it's only this year that we will actually see the full implementation of the Renewable Energy Act, because all of these non-fiscal incentives are now in place. The policies have now been enacted. We have different department circulars, which the government, DOE primarily, has already issued out. So that's exciting to see, right, Karen? All of these are now going to be hopefully fully implemented.
Very
Um,
much.
yeah, because when we look at the National Renewable Energy Plan, way back in 2009, it had already the ambition to have 15,000 by 2030, 15,000 megawatts supposedly of renewable energy capacity installed. And this covers the period of 2010 to 2030, and 2030 is what? 10 years from now. So
Yes.
the National Renewable Energy Board thought, hey, we should be reviewing this already. So when they did a review last year, they found out that we're actually so much off track, which is very sad. They said that when they calculated like 2017, existing capacity was lower than the target it had set for itself, as much as 2,500 megawatts, lower than what it had targeted. And this is reflected in the generation mix. So you can see here that a big chunk of our generation mix is really coming from fossil fuel, primarily from coal. So this has affected us from renewable energy getting the target that it wants in terms of capacity. And this is really backed by the review of the National Renewable Energy Board. Installation targets are way off track, and this causes a diminishing share in the supply. So you can see here in the graph, the coal which is denominated by the gray portion has really increased um, to the to the detriment of the green portion, which is renewable energy, unfortunately. And and the main impact there is really ensuring that we have self-sufficiency. By relying so much on fossil fuel, we've actually decreased our self-sufficiency from 67% back in 2008 to now only 46%. And why is this important to understand? And I think this chart is very important. It's because we've relied so much on imported fossil fuel. And when in fact we have so much indigenous renewable energy that we can tap, which would make us more, in terms of energy security, make us more energy secure. And in fact, this leads us to a topic which you would probably hear or see in articles now on stranded assets. It increases the risk in the energy sector for stranded assets. And because now renewable electricity costs are actually going lower from less than fossil fuel, because the technology for renewable energy is actually falling. We've seen it in many years. The cost for solar, now battery storage might in a couple of years now really fall, and this will lead to some of our coal plants or fossil fuel plants being stranded. What will happen then? And especially since we have a lot of potential for renewable energy to meet these challenges. And if we dream, we can actually have 100% renewable energy by 2050. What nice thing to do, no? To have, Karen, if we have this in our generation mix by 2040 or even earlier, na 100%
Yes.
renewable energy.
I'm
And
looking forward to that.
and if we can transition really early and fast, and I think that is quite possible. Because why should we go renewables? We know that it's sustainable. We know it will provide energy security, and it's actually economically good for us. The resources will actually help us lower our electricity costs, especially now with the challenges we've had with the increasing release of energy. But we understand we need have to have a balanced energy mix. And at the moment, we do not have that balance because it's lopsided in favor of fossil fuel. And why we need balanced energy mix, because it can actually improve the cost of doing business, and also the cost of living if we manage our energy mix better and make it more balanced and make it greener. Because the reality is, if like what DOE says, we need to have base load, and if you anchor it on fossil fuel, we need to ask ourselves these questions: do we have sufficient energy? And we've seen that even with the use of fossil fuel, we've had areas where you have rotating brownouts, so you're not actually having sufficient energy. Do we control fuel prices? We know that most of these coal that we've had is actually we import it, and who controls the price is not it's not the one who's buying, it's really the one who's supplying. um, is it competitively priced? At the moment, it's not. It's already very expensive as compared to other renewable energy technologies. And as I mentioned, we've not really eliminated brownouts in certain areas. So why would we, have renewable energy? So, so we really should, seize this opportunity to have control of our energy mix and build, reduce dependence on the grid. We do have, opportunity now to do distributed generation and look at decentralized generation as well. So for us in WWF, we're doing a lot of work. And Sigur Karen, when you used to mention you were doing teaching on energy, you probably went before joining the Panda prior thinking, what you say, an environment organization working on energy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but we've been doing this for quite some time, working on energy. We actually in 2011 globally in WWF International released this the energy report with a vision for 100% renewable energy by 2050 for the globally as a vision. And in the Philippines, we worked on various technologies like geothermal. We had a study on building momentum for low carbon development and try to find recommendations for the government to look and hopefully implement. This study was in fact issued in 2014. And currently we're working on a project in one of the cities down south in Mindanao, trying a process of multi-stakeholder planning for a city's energy development plan. Because in the Philippines, energy planning is usually centralized. But we thought that cities and local governments, they're mandated to come up with their own city development plans. But why don't they understand how much energy or is needed to plan that development? So this project hopes to be able to, make them come up with their own energy development plan, and of course integrate renewable energy into that plan, and hopefully we'll be able to help them also find financing for that. And maybe this can be an example for other local governments across the country. We also have done campaigns, so Seize Your Power, which we encourage the shift of investments to renewables. Also highlighting different technologies like solar and wind technology. But we also understand there's the challenge of electrification. And we've seen that challenge firsthand because we've worked with, WWF works in many communities, in island communities, and we've seen that around 12 million Filipinos also are deprived of access to electricity sources. And this is very challenging even before the pandemic. So we've tried to help in our own small way, like small scale fishermen, by bringing in solar powered LED night landing charging stations. These ones we're working with tuna fishermen. Um, and then we've tried to also provide the gift of light through Earth Hour in island barangays in Palawan. And also developed what we call Earth Hour Village, because we wanted to go beyond just Earth Hour, so that's the beyond the hour work, and that involves not just electricity but also on container gardening and rainwater harvesting. And now we're also working with 4 island barangays two in Dinagat Island province and two in Surigao del Norte provinces, to help them have a solar community-based island tourism and livelihood platform. But also, we want to teach people to be energy efficient. Because renewable energy, while it's good, the first thing actually for people to do is energy efficiency. And, um, and energy efficiency is what they call the low-hanging fruit. What do you think, Karen, would be the first things you would think of in terms of energy efficiency?
For
What
me,
would
what
be
I
the
would Yes, for me, what I would think of is using energy efficient appliances that we can use from our houses.
Yes, very, yeah, actually, and those are one of the first things. And there are a lot of benefits for energy efficiency. It can actually be, not just save money for us. Can actually stimulate the economy, and there have been studies that it's actually healthy for us. It has benefits and health benefits as well, because you have other things that you can count on when you have efficiency in your household. And we're fortunate that last year, a new law was enacted called the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, which really now institutionalizes energy efficiency and conservation. Because before it was just like, a program that we know it's there, but it isn't not really encouraged to do, or we were encouraged, but everybody just doesn't really do it. So now with the law, we're hoping that it will boost this sector and enhance the efficient use of energy by giving incentives also. So you can see here the various aspects of the law. I won't go into it. Just suffices to say that we already have certification. It will look at energy performance standards and provide incentives and other features. And of course, there's Earth Hour that WWF pushes. We started off by telling people, you can conserve by turning off your lights for 1 hour. But we have gone beyond that, no? Karen, you've participated in our Earth Hour before, and I'm so glad to have you on board also. And we've actually done a lot of things to connect Earth Hour to other things like connect to Earth. What can we do beyond just the 1 hour? Because we know we can still change the ending. And part of that is also being energy efficient. So you mentioned, Karen, that change your appliances and think of using more energy efficient appliances. One of the things that people can do actually is do a basic energy audit. So as I said, you look at how many appliances do you have, how much energy do they use, and then you can determine whether what kind of appropriate energy efficiency measures would be you can undertake. And you can see here, this is from the DOE when we partnered with them for Earth Hour, was how much energy that actually can be saved if you look at the different appliances and their use. So I'm gonna go run through a little bit of some of those tips. Some of them are very basic and you probably, people will understand, but maybe one is to look at the energy labels. So DOE has these energy labels when you buy different kinds of appliances. So for air conditioning, you have this energy efficiency ratio. The higher the ratio, the more energy efficient it is. So of course, you have to install it in the coolest and shadiest part of the room so that it doesn't compete with the energy that's also outside. And you have to match it also to the size of the room. Otherwise, it will be using so much more power to be able to cool the room. And then, of course, these are just some of the other tips. You can actually DOE recommends using air conditioning with fan so that it can circulate the cool air. So that's making it more energy efficient. So instead of making your thermostat lower, use it at a comfortable temperature and then use the fan to circulate that cool air. And then refrigerators also have these kinds of labels. So similarly, the higher the energy efficiency factor, the better it is. And then you have these other tips as well. So don't keep your refrigerator door open. And then we use a lot of lighting, like, turn it off if you're not using it. Take advantage of natural lights, especially for us who are now, working at home. Try to use more of the daylight time. And then the simple changing of light bulbs from incandescent to CFLs to LEDs actually saves a lot. And even light bulbs have their own energy label. So look for those labels, and see how much you will be able to save by just knowing what is the output from these lamps themselves. And if since many of us are using laptops, these are actually more energy efficient than desktops. But we also have to ensure that you also use the energy saving features of your laptops. You actually have that, and even on your phones. And you also have to understand there's also what you call the phantom load, which is for those that you plug your like microwaves with clocks. It's the microwave is still plugged, and even if you're not using the microwave per se, but the clock is still ticking, so to speak. You're actually using up electricity, and that can cost you a lot per month as it accumulates. Okay, so we know these are a lot of tips because we want humans or us to live in harmony with nature. And there's so much things we can do now, especially with the new normal. Even as we go towards a green recovery, we have to understand and focus on the long-term needs for the Philippines. We need to be more self-reliant, really, and even in terms of our energy needs by tapping our bountiful renewable energy sources and implementing stronger energy efficiency initiatives. Um, we need to invest in natural capital so that our ecosystems would be resilient and regenerate. And therefore, we should also ensure protection for our country's carbon sinks, which are basically our forests, our reefs. And all of us should really, not just the policymakers, businesses should also integrate policies which would integrate sustainable practices into your systems. And we all should really look at our own lifestyle, look at low carbon living, establish safe, inclusive, sustainable mobility solutions and green infrastructure. And of course, the challenge of plastics, that is a big thing. And plastics, to create them, uses a lot of energy, actually. Um, but these plans, whether it's economic, health, environmental plans, they will only come to fruition if we do have a lot of proper integration, consultation, and engagement across different stakeholders. And that would include also the financial sector. So our banking sector should really get involved, and we're very fortunate that WWF is working with on a sustainable banking project, and the Banco Central has already issued its sustainable finance framework. And that's a really good step for our banking sector to be involved in pushing for sustainable environmental impacts. And that includes integrating these considerations into the monetary policy. And that policy is not just on the government scale, but also for us. As we buy things, we should also think about, is our money going towards buying good products which are sustainable, less impact on the environment when they were produced, and when there's no waste that comes out. So at the end of the day, we hope that we have a future which is balanced with nature, because we need to build a future wherein people and nature thrive. So with that, I hope everyone learns a lot. We hope that this talk is something that you take away something for your households, and it's a practice that you will continue. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Attorney Gia. But before we continue to our next segment, I would like to invite everyone to support our WWF-Philippines fundraising campaign. Now, this is our way to support the lives of those who really work tirelessly during this time. We really need to give back to them as well. Well, flash now on your screens are our GCash QR code, as well as the bank account numbers, where you can send your donations to help our environmental frontliners. To know more about WWF Philippines and how you can help us, hashtag change the ending, you can visit our website in wwf.org.ph or simply visit our Facebook page and click the Learn More button. I personally loved this topic because I learned so much. It touched a little bit about thermodynamics and electromagnetism and a little on modern physics. And I really want to thank you, attorney, because it's very practical for us to really know about these things now, especially everyone is just in their houses. It's actually like a refresher course. Before we go to our Q&A, thank you so much. And I want to thank you. I want to thank all the audiences because we have a lot of questions that we have here. Are you ready to answer them, attorney?
I hope I can. I mean, I'm economics by and lawyer by background, but I've learned a lot from working on the energy sector. I'm very grateful for those who have been patient also to teach me about this. So yeah, I hope I am able to answer some of the questions that are posed to us by our viewers, and thank you for sending your questions in advance.
Okay, don't worry, attorney. The questions are not what do you call this? Physics related so much. Don't worry. Okay, the first question is someone who works in the energy sector, focusing on rural electrification and electric cooperatives in the Philippines. That person wanted to ask, how do barangays from provinces conceive or plan their sources and uses of electricity? I believe we touched on this a little earlier, but perhaps you can expand on it.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and thank you for that. Actually, electric cooperatives, they have they submit to the Department of Energy a distribution development plan, and part of that distribution development plan includes the sources for which they would get the electricity that they will distribute into the franchise that they have. So and that's basically how they plan. It's very, very, traditional in a sense. And we've been also trying to encourage electric cooperatives to also look at renewable energy sources. Many of them have been exposed to using, if not fossil fuel, diesel as a basic, source of electricity. And if I don't know if many of the barangays or these cooperatives have really looked at renewable energy as much as they can to be able to plan a resource. And we're fortunate that there are some who are actually a bit more progressive, using integrating renewable energy. And that's one of the things. That's why in our project, we want to get the local governments more involved, along with the cooperative, the local, the electric cooperative, to work closely more together along with other stakeholders to plan the sources of electricity, and hopefully use more sustainable sources in that energy development plan, or even a power development plan, which they will come out. But currently, not all of them do use renewable energy, and we hope that will change in future years, in the coming years. So
All
thank you
right,
for that question.
thank you for that, attorney. And I also saw earlier that we have projects in WWF where we reach out to these rural areas. So we also give them, those small sources of electricity that they can also use.
Yeah.
Okay. For your second question, can you discuss how electricity consumers can shift from commercial electricity distributors such as Meralco, and is it feasible for an average resident to rely solely on renewable energy, such as through solar panels?
Wow, they're really listening, huh? Well, yes. I mean, we do have recently issued what we call the Green Energy Option program, which the government will roll out. The rules were just signed just recently. So theoretically, electricity consumers can can actually request or ensure want that the electricity that comes to their house or their establishment would come from greener sources. So that's the green energy option. But there's already something called the net metering, wherein an average household can actually put in solar panels on top of the roof, for which they would use that to power what they have in their own household. So that's called, and that process is actually called net metering. And there is going to be a opportunity to we're pushing for what they call enhanced net metering, increasing the threshold for net metering to happen in the country. But that's already ongoing and it's actually feasible. I mean, of course, when it first started, the cost of solar panels was quite expensive at the time. But now there are actually packages that developers have given to households. And in fact, even financing is already, you have the opportunity to have financing through Pag-ibig Fund. I think that you can be able to finance your solar panels at home. So that's a good move, and I hope there'll be further incentives later on, and more households actually doing it.
Yes, I actually see a lot of households do that. And thank you so much because, it's an eye opener for that for us. And now for our third question, how can households have access to this renewable energy source if we want to actually choose that option?
Well, as I mentioned, yes, so the green energy option that's coming out. Actually, we're planning to have um, more detailed, more laymanized explanation of how you can do it. But yeah, the green energy option allows households to have that kind of opportunity to tell your distribution utility. Actually, our distribution utilities are now mandated minimum percent of 1% coming from renewable energy. And by doing, and in that, that's called the renewable portfolio standard. And and based on that, you can actually, households can actually tell your distributor, we want to be able to source the ones coming to our house coming from renewable energy sources. So that's a option, that's a program that's going to be rolled out. There's still things that are being ironed out by the Department of Energy, but the guidelines have been issued, and the details will be further elaborated in the coming months. So I hope people will stay tuned to that. And WWF, actually, we're going to be hopefully working with the National Renewable Energy Board to come up with more information material, so people will understand how can our household actually engage in this, how we can be more participative in this green energy option.
That's very interesting. Thank you. I told you, attorney, our audiences are really listening because the questions are very interesting. Okay, we have two more, and these two questions are a bit different and also interesting. The
Okay.
next one is, given the pandemic, do you think there will be an effect in transitioning to or investing in 100% renewable energy? And should we invest in renewable energy now to also economically recover better for post COVID?
I it's a very good question, and I think if we have policymakers who are listening, and this probably comes from a policymaker themselves. Yes, I think we should be investing on renewable energy, not just now, even years ago, even before the pandemic. The pandemic actually provides us the opportunity to transition better, um, to transition hopefully faster as well. I mean, if we put our policies right, and the money also, the financial backing right to support green initiatives, I think we will be able to weather this in a more low carbon pathway. So yeah, my answer answer is yeah, we should be investing in renewables, because in the long run, we will actually recover better from the pandemic. In fact, the National Renewable Energy Board said during the pandemic, our renewable energy plants have actually functioned quite well. They didn't have challenges, and of course, they had challenges in terms of manpower, in the sense that some of people didn't have to go to work as much into the plants. But I mean, the technology is such that it actually it's moving smoothly, and I think that's a testament to how these green energy plants are working well despite the pandemic. So I think that we've seen, people have commented that when there was a lockdown, you had clearer skies. I think that kind of example, while it was a bit temporary, because we know once the economy opens up, we will also definitely have more people on the roads, or our plants working more. I think that glimpse really should be something we should hang on, and something that we should look forward to better if we are going to transition and invest more in renewable energy.
Yeah, I really like what you
Yeah.
said. Yeah, it's really true. During the COVID, we really saw clearer skies, and it's something that we really have to hold on to. And our practices have to change after this COVID season. Okay, I'm going to ask the last two more questions because we really do have a lot of questions coming in, and they're very, very interesting.
Mhm.
This next one is quite challenging. What do you think can make financing or investing in renewable energy companies more attractive for banks and other players in the financial sector?
Wow, this probably comes from a banker or an investor. Um, I think one of that is we really should be, as I said, focus on the long term. The fortunate thing now is that there is a sustainable finance framework that our Banco Central has issued, which gives banks a transition period of 3 years to integrate sustainability into their policies, and that is also a push for our banks and our financial sector to really look at financing investing in renewable energy. But I think one of the other thing is also, the technology is actually getting cheaper, and if you compare it to fossil fuel plants, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be what we call stranded assets. They'll be very expensive to run compared to, renewable energy, which is going to be, you don't have the cost of imported fuel to run them, or because they rely on indigenous sources. So I think those are things to be considered to make them attractive. But of course, there are other things. Are they planned well? You find a resource in the area, and that's why we're also encouraging local governments to plan and include renewable energy into their plans, so that to give also these renewable energy sources a space to be used and utilized well. And we hope that the financial sector will also look into it. In fact, I think the big players now in the renewable energy scape are already leading the way, and I'm glad we have a lot of renewable energy players who have had the backing from the financial sector to get their development up and running. And I think by integrating these banks, by integrating sustainability in their policies, they will see actually that it makes sense to invest into renewable energy companies.
Wow, it's very much well said. We really have to look beyond what we have now and to think long term. Very, very, very nice. The last one is, which country has been the most helpful and supportive in generating renewable energy projects for us and will be investing more today and in the near future?
Oh my, which country? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I guess because the technology comes from them, or they've huge strides in terms of the development of the technology, like wind power. The Danes, I mean, from Denmark, the Norway, they've really step up, because the UK, because they've used the energy in that kind of technology in their area. So I think they have talks about doing this. I mean, some of the energy wind plants, wind energy turbines that we have in the country actually come from Denmark, from Spain. So those are countries that have been helpful in terms of the technology. Solar also from that area, like Germany, has been very helpful, not only in terms of the technology, but they've also helped, I mean, the government also in terms of the kinds of policies, because they've tried it before in their country, and they've seen what works and what does not. Of course, we need to tweak it to the Philippine circumstance. Um, Nearer towards Asia, we have examples from Singapore, from China, of course, because of the large manufacturing strength that it has in terms of solar and other renewable energy. But we're actually a lead. If you want to talk about an energy aspect, we're actually a lead in geothermal. We've exported our engineers who are very good in geothermal, because we've been using geothermal for more than since the 70s. And I think, instead of the question of us being most helpful, we've actually helped other countries as well in that aspect. We've helped our colleagues in Indonesia to sort of explain to their ministers how does geothermal work in the Philippines. Of course, it has its own challenges, but I think that because of the experiences that we've gathered, we're also helpful to other countries in terms of how we're doing renewable energy in our own backyard. So, and I know that some of our Filipino companies are investing in renewable energy projects also in other countries. So that's a good thing to happen. I mean, we're investing in projects in Vietnam, in across the Pacific, in Chile. So it's not just one country. I think it's really all of us doing our own bit in helping each other, especially when we talk about a sustainable energy.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that we are contributing to others, and other countries are contributing to us. I'm looking forward that the Philippines would use more of the renewable energy. Maraming salamat po, Attorney Gia, and thank you so much to our audiences, because they really listened to us and we did not overwhelm them.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, some of them were technical, but we hope that we be able to. And stay tuned. I mean, the beauty of this is that the energy landscape is changing and it's transitioning, and we're hoping it's transitioning towards a more sustainable future. And I hope you can be with us in this transition, because WWF cannot do it alone. Government cannot do it alone. We really should be working together to be able to, as we say, change the ending, and we know that we can be able to do this together possible. So thank you to everyone who's listened, and thank you, Karen, for also being here and helping. And it's been wonderful.
You're very, very welcome po. And honestly, thank you to also our viewers and your questions. And of course, again, before we wrap up, we would like to invite everyone to support the WWF Philippines fundraising campaign for our environmental frontliners. In these challenging times, let us help the people who work tirelessly to ensure that us and our families are well fed and protected. Flashing now on your screens is our Gcash QR code and bank accounts where you can send your donation drives. We will also post a link to a post-assessment survey on the event today for today's Panda Talk webisode after the show. So please help the team know how we can provide a better learning experience for everyone through this Panda Talk. That concludes our second Panda Talk. I hope that you learned so much from us, and I hope that you would also apply the sustainability that you also learned from us. Stay tuned on the WWF Philippines official social media pages for announcements on the future Panda Talks. Once again, my name is Karen Bosco, your Mr. 2017, and your WWF Advocate signing off. Bye, everyone.